Okay, so welcome to our workshop on creating Latin and Latinized names under the SeqCode. My name is Miguel Rodriguez. I'm affiliated with the University of Innsbruck, and I will be joined by Dr. Dominique Behrens from the University of Mainz. And this workshop has been created under the SeqCode, or the Code of Nomenclature of prokaryotes described from sequence data, and it's supported by the University of Innsbruck. So let me first give you a brief introduction on what the SeqCode is. In general, codes of nomenclature try to solve a very big problem of how we give names to organisms, to biological diversity. They're, in general, developed to ensure precise scientific names of taxa, which basically means a one-to-one ratio between names and taxons. And taxa, one name, one taxon. That should be, ideally, the aim of any code of nomenclature. In other words, we don't want many names for the same taxon, that is synonyms, and we don't want many taxa receiving the same name, that is homonyms. Of course, that sounds like a fine aim to have. The problem is that most diversity is just yet to be discovered, and there is a lack of consensus on taxonomic units and methods. So that makes it actually a very, very difficult problem. So how do we solve this problem? Well, the genius idea that in general codes of nomenclature have implemented for that is the concept of types. Nomenclatural types solve this problem by setting an anchor, something that we can compare against, and say that anything that is similar to that type, to the nomenclatural type, receives the same name. Now, what similar means, of course, has to do with taxonomic methods, but then that becomes a problem, a scientific problem of taxonomy. And nomenclaturally, it is clear, unique, precise. Now, what do we use as types? Well, again, across different codes of nomenclature, we have different types of types. We have for example, botanical and zoological preparations. We have preparations of different tissues. We can use the fossil record as types. And in the case of microorganisms, we can, of course, use living cultures. And this is actually an innovation of the Code of Nomenclature for prokaryotes that came around 2001. So let's see what traditionally has happened in the ICMP, or the International Code of Nomenclature of Prokaryotes. This is an excerpt from ICMP edition 1966 that tells us that types of bacteria and archaea can be a description, a preserved specimen, or preparation, or an illustration. So basically a very liberal definition of what a type can be. But starting in 2001, we had a big change. And this is an excerpt from ICMP edition of 2008 that tells us that as of 1st January 2001, the designation of type strain should be a viable culture deposited in at least 2 publicly accessible culture collections in different countries. Now, that is meant to promote isolation and promote the sharing of isolates between groups, which is a lofty goal, and it's wonderful. But it has a problem that strictness that only viable cultures, axenic viable cultures, can be used has a problem, or has multiple problems. The biggest problem really is that most prokaryotes have not been brought into pure culture. So most prokaryotes cannot be validly named under the ICMP. And we see we have some data from a recent survey in the Genome Taxonomy database that tells us that from around 149 bacterial phyla, now phyla are the largest or second largest rank of taxonomy, depending on which code you follow. So these are very large groups of organisms, and from 149 known bacterial phyla, we have been able to culture, only 46 of them. And from 20 archaeal phyla, we have only brought into pure culture 4 of them. That means even at the very high level, we have no abilities to grow in the lab these microorganisms. So they cannot be, names cannot be stably assigned. They cannot receive validly published names under the ICMP. But also, it's not just the uncultivated majority, also many prokaryotes are fastidious and cannot be maintained in culture collections. So this is the example of Nitrosopumilus maritimus. This is one of the dominant nitrifiers in the ocean, so a very, very important species worldwide that was isolated in 2005 already. So there was a pure culture available, but it was very difficult to maintain in culture collections. The genome itself was fully sequenced in 2010, but the name was not validly published until 2017. Why? Because it took this long for culture collections to actually maintain it reproducibly in their laboratories. So this is a problem. It's a problem with the uncultured. It's a problem with fastidious microorganisms. And also, it's a problem with different legislatures. So what we one problem that we are facing more recently is the regulations to share biological material. And this is chiefly, not only, but chiefly due to the implementations of the Nagoya Protocol. So the Nagoya Protocol tells us how to access genetic resources in a fair and equitable manner between countries and around the world. And some countries have been very proactive on the implementation of local legislations for the Nagoya Protocol, such as India, South Africa, Brazil, and for at least one culture collection, the Republic of South Korea. And they have been punished for that because, well, these regulations are not compatible with the free sharing of cultures required by the ICMP, so the International Journal of Systematic and Evolutionary Microbiology, or IJSEM, has determined that since 2020, these are not eligible for the proposal of new names of prokaryotes. Now, what can we do about these problems? Well, as I started this introduction, what we need is something to compare against, right? A type, nomenclatural type, is essentially something we want to compare against. And in practice, for prokaryotic systematics, already starting in the early 2000s, most of taxonomy has been built around genomes anyway. So what we compare against is genomes. We don't compare strains to strains. We compare genomes of strains against genomes of strains. Since 2009 and early 2010s, most prominent systematic journals require sequences of genomes to describe new species. And so the natural next step is let's use genomes as nomenclatural types. And that was indeed proposed already in 2015 and later in 2016 by Barney Whitman. And that proposal gave rise to a series of movements around genome-based nomenclature. And this was, there were a few workshops in 2018 and 2019 that were summarized in the Murray 2020 paper that proposed plans A and B. Plan A will be, let's use genomes as type material under the ICMP. If that's not possible, then plan B will be, let's set up our own code so we can have stable names also for the uncultivated majority. Indeed, in 2020, the ICSP, that's the body regulating the implementation of the ICMP, rejected the proposal, and so we were left with option B. And then under Plan B, the first draft of the SeqCode was proposed in 2020. There were workshops, a series of workshops in total with over 800 registrants from 42 different countries that worked together into discussing the structure of the SeqCode, and that resulted in the first edition of the SeqCode being published in 2022. So that is the SeqCode. The SeqCode is a code of nomenclature that allows us to regulate the proposal of prokaryotic names described from sequence data, that is, from genomes. Now, under the SeqCode, you can propose names using one of two paths. Path number one is if you have discovered a new species or a new genus or anything above that, and you want to give them a name, you're working in your manuscript describing this taxon, you can already start registering these names under what we call the SeqCode registry. That's the central hub for registration of names under the SeqCode. We can give you feedback. We can help you with the nomenclature, with the grammar, with the Latin. And then by the time you publish your paper, the name is already curated. Or path number two is if you have already published your names, for example, a large number of candidatus names have been already published, you can then validate them under the SeqCode and receive a priority, right? So have those names no longer as a temporary assignment, but as a validly published name. So you can learn more about the SeqCode and the SeqCode registry in these URLs. So the SeqCode registry is where you can register your names or explore names that have been proposed under the SeqCode. And if you want to read the SeqCode, the text of the SeqCode itself, that is available at seqcode.de/SeqCode. And then let's see how we can actually create these names. How do we use Latin to create names, to come up with some names? Just as a prelude, at seqcode.de/p:/sandbox, you can find an etymology sandbox where you can try out some things even without registration. You can just go there and start playing with the dictionaries, start receiving a syllabification for your words, and explore different options for names, as we will learn next.